Hello, hello. Welcome to What's Working Now. I am your host, Katie Richardson. You might be asking yourself, why is it called What's Working Now? Because we want to identify the principles, the foundational elements that are allowing entrepreneurs to be successful in the world today. And we're deconstructing, we're looking for those foundational elements so that you can learn from these incredible entrepreneurs and implement them in your own business and in your own life. Today, we have an exceptional entrepreneur. This is somebody that I have personally known for several years, and I want to introduce him, and then I'm even going to read his bio. So Adam Sewell, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
Well, Adam, you and I first met at a mastermind. You didn't know this, but you did. I was in pain. I was trying to sit through hours of really incredible sessions. I was standing at the back of the room. You could tell Katie's in pain, and you came and talked to me. And come to find out, like, that's your expertise. You get people out of pain. And I want to actually start by reading your bio because you guys, Adam is one of the most incredible individuals you'll ever meet. And I can't do him justice just by telling you everything that I know about him. I'm just going to read the bio because it's that exceptional. I mean, you may have heard of him from Good Morning, Texas. Dr. Adam Sewell is a triple board certified physician. He grew up with a father whose spine was in the shape of an S, known as scoliosis. And Dr. Sewell saw the effects of chronic pain firsthand as a child when he would interact with his father. So vowing to never let another person suffer as his father had, Dr. Sewell became a board certified anesthesiologist and board certified pain management physician, offering cutting edge procedures to help those in pain. Dr. Sewell is well known for his compassion for his patients and straightforward, blunt nature. It's not uncommon for new patients to remark, that doctor actually cares. And Adam, you know, I had that experience with you because eventually, as you guys will find out, he got me out of pain. Dr. Sewell has a very unusual past, and this is why I needed to share all of this with you. Growing up in Plano, Texas, Dr. Sewell attended Hendricks Middle School. He was inspired by the Doogie Howser television show. Please tell me you remember that show. I know I do. And he started attending night classes at the local college. After passing a battery of tests, 21 in total, Dr. Sewell was admitted full-time to college after his middle school graduation. Let's say that again. He was admitted to college after graduating middle school. Hello, I've got a seventh grader, and like that just blows my mind, Adam. He was admitted full-time to college after his middle school graduation and graduated college 2 weeks after turning 18 years old. Holy cow, Adam. And we're not done, by the way. I'm going to keep going. Dr. Sewell completed his medical school at University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, working nights and weekends in the operating room. Dr. Sewell had the unique distinction of being the only medical student to have completed over 100 spinals and epidural prior to residency training. Hello, like you were hands-on, you were already in it. Dr. Sewell was then accepted into University of Miami, Jackson Memorial Hospital. He completed a surgical internship and anesthesiology residency. Okay, I mean, why not do two of them at the same time? Dr. Sewell often would work additional hours at the prestigious Sylvester Cancer Center, helping patients in severe pain from cancer. Dr. Sewell then completed additional training for board certification in interventional pain management and addiction medicine. Like, you guys understand why I'm reading all this? Like, this guy has so much experience, a breadth of knowledge, and is able to look at somebody's pain from such a holistic view. I think it's just so fascinating. I'm going to keep going. After practicing for many years in different areas, Dr. Sewell had discovered the following principles and lives by them. And I want you guys to hear this. Treat every patient as if they were a family member. Asking yourself, if this was my brother or sister, what would I do? This question will always lead to the right decision in patient care. And I'm just going to jump in and give you my personal experience. I had back pain. I was consulting with Dr. Sewell and eventually flew out to Dallas to have some of his treatments. And he presented multiple options to me. And he said, what do you want to do, Katie? And I said, well, what would you recommend? He said, if this was my wife, this is what I would recommend. So I personally experienced that from you, Adam. The second thing is to make it easy. Medicine is complicated. As trained medical professionals, many things are second nature to us, but for most patients, these concepts often are not clear. Consider drawing a map for your patients. I think that is so good. I love that. Consider drawing a map for your patients. Here's an example of a simple map we use to treat moderate to severe osteoarthritis. So cool. I love this. And I want you to, I'm still not done. Adam's dying to jump in, I'm sure. I want to hear some more examples of that. The other one is to invest in the patient relationship. And again, I personally experienced this. Now more than ever, information regarding medical conditions and treatments is easily available. What makes you good at the art of medicine is making a connection with your patient. You might have once heard the saying that large doors swing on small hinges. Your connection with the patient is what allows for the art of medical practice to occur. This is true for every entrepreneur, every CEO, every leader. Make that human to human connection. Adam is such a shining example of this. We're almost done here. Finally, Dr. Sewell loves to teach and believes strongly in the concept of a medical team. During my time at Ryder Trauma Center, Jackson Memorial Hospital Shock Trauma Center, hello, I'm sure you have so many crazy stories from that. It was abundantly clear that the only way to deliver excellence consistently is to have a team where each individual is empowered through education, knowledge, and a supportive environment. I believe that an educated and empowered medical team is the safest way to deliver healthcare and makes a fun and open work environment. Holy cow. Adam Sewell, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Katie. I really appreciate it. And as always, you have so much good energy, just hypes me up.
Good. Well, I'm super excited to talk to you on so many different levels. I'm always fascinated by the health and maintaining and cultivating energy and enthusiasm, and being out of pain is a huge part of that. And at the same time, you're a man who knows and understands what it is to really approach a very old system and to bring fresh new eyes and new ideas, and to not be afraid to kind of lead the charge. And in doing that, create something new and grow and scale a business that creates massive waves. So Adam, before we jump into all of those things, and we will, I want to give the audience a chance to really hear who Adam Sewell is, and maybe one story of how you got here. Tell us the story of maybe a moment or an experience that has really formed and shaped who you are today.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of them, but kind of the one I was thinking of that, kind of started it all out was just, when I was, basically in middle school, I remember I got, I'm just, it's kind of kind of a lame example maybe, but I was able to ask a girl to do a slow dance. And that was the big thing back in 6th grade, right?
Yeah.
And so I finally got somebody to say yes. And at the time I didn't realize going out with somebody meant that you just stared at the floor and never talked to them, So I finally got the girl to do a slow dance, and I got ready, got on the dance floor, ready to go. And one of my classmates jumped from the balcony onto the dance floor, shattering both of his legs. Two of them were fighting with each other, ended up going, basically at the end of the dance, we didn't get a chance to even complete the dance because we had 2 different ambulances coming, and it was just total chaos. And I looked around and I said, is this place right for me? And I find that a lot of my own personal journeys, even though I started out in medicine, later then transitioned to becoming an entrepreneur, I find that the entrepreneur journey has been present throughout my entire life. And this is something I see a lot with entrepreneurs, is to sit and ask, are you in the right place? Is this where you're supposed to be? And when I was in 6th grade and I couldn't even do a slow dance with the girl that asked, not that I was necessarily the best dancer or anything, but the thing that I discovered was that wasn't the right place for me. And that's when I started to remember, hey, there was a show called Dookie Howser. I remember he went to college when he was young. How do I do that? And many people told me that, oh, it's impossible, or oh, you got to do this or that. And the reality was, it wasn't impossible. It was very simple. I went to the local community college. There was a bus that went near my house at the time called Dart Bus. It was Dallas area rapid transit. I think it was $1.50 to
Wow.
take the bus. And I took it 3 hours to the community college, which was probably 20 miles away, but it took 3 hours. But just that thinking differently is what opens so many doors. And so I find that for entrepreneurs, it's the same thing. Entrepreneurs are people who introduce a marketplace to a business or a business to a marketplace. They find a need that needs to be served. And so it all starts with asking you that simple question, which is, am I in the right place? Is this where I'm supposed to be?
Wow. What a profound story and what a profound experience. And as somebody who knows you personally, I've watched as you live that out. You live that truth. You know, Tony Robbins said it's not that we don't have the right answers, it's that we're asking the wrong questions. And what I'm hearing you say is, even at a really young age, you were willing to ask yourself maybe some hard questions. And if people don't know you, you're not the kind of guy who enters the room with guns ablazing and being like, I'm going to take over the world. You have this really powerful humility about you. And so to hear that you were willing to ask these bold questions and tell yourself the truth shows me kind of how you've gotten to where you are. And when I first met you and you were telling me what was wrong with the traditional medical system, I was like, yes, somebody gets it. And how there are so many people in medicine or any field who just kind of go with the flow. And you have consistently, again, not with guns ablazing, that might fit for some people, but you in your true to you way have been willing to ask a new question and to disrupt whole industries. And you were just telling me just before we hopped on how, well, tell the audience, like, you have certain areas that you've specialized in throughout your career. And right now you have something that you're specializing in and you're willing to kind of lead the charge here.
Yeah, absolutely. Just asking, just like you said, like asking those questions is what has allowed us to basically, say us, but like myself and the different companies that I work with, to basically change the way medicine is practiced. Because let's just be straightforward, like, I'm a doctor and I hate going to the doctor. Like, it's not a good experience,
Yeah.
you're treated like a number. It's a semi-sterile environment where, it just doesn't feel good. And so that's why you see things shifting in medicine. And so we ask questions like, what is the main problem that people are having? And so we found out, like, a lot of people have like osteoarthritis of the knee. There's a way to get that fixed without having surgery for like 85% of people. And so we deployed that across our.
And can I jump in here? You
Yeah.
shared something with me about surgery, because so much of medicine kind of drives towards surgery. It's a business model, right? And that's an income stream. And you were teaching that to me, and you said the thing that people are missing is that, yes, surgery might fix one thing, but when you cut into the human body, what you're changing it. And so it sets off a cascade of other maybe unexpected or unwanted events. And so, yeah, you live this truth, right? And you asked a better question. Is there a different, like, surgery is one way that we could maybe deal with this osteoarthritis, but you found it a better way.
Absolutely. And then I find also just that, like, asking questions and then treating people the way that you would treat your family, if you really do that, then what you find is that you have to innovate and you have to find new solutions. Because, if this was your mother, if this was your sister, would you really want them to have an amputation of their legs so they could get an artificial knee that will last 5 years and do that every 5 years for the rest of their life?
Wow.
Like, the answer is no. Like, you don't want to do that. And I'm not saying that there, there are some people that need to have surgery. Sure. But you have to, once you understand the business side of medicine, you start to realize that the way things are is there's a reason for it, and it's primarily financial. And there's very little control over the delivery of medicine by physicians anymore. It's primarily through, hospital corporations and these kind of things, And so that's where you have the biggest opportunity. So I also coach a lot of medical entrepreneurs that are starting their own business. And so one of the things that I try to do is to help them get out of the habit of just letting them kind of express themselves or use their creative side to build a solution the market needs,
So cool. Yeah. Adam, sometimes when, as an entrepreneur and innovator and somebody who isn't afraid to ask the questions that maybe other people are not asking, sometimes when you start approaching things from a different perspective, you can get pushback and you can get haters, you can get people from your own industry who are like, what are you doing? Did you experience any of that? And if so, how did you handle it?
Oh, every time you do something like that, you pretty much initially the first thing they tell you is that's impossible. If it could have been done, it would have already been done.
Yeah.
And what I find is just people get in their own habit, and there's a lot of reasons why they stay the way they are. And there's a big chunk of the population that is invested in the story of why things are the way they are, because they didn't want to innovate, they didn't want to take the risk, they didn't, for whatever reason. And then you start going in there, you start changing things, you can get a lot of people very angry very quickly.
Yeah.
But there's times where, like you have to do the right thing, no matter what.
Hmm.
And I remember one time when I was in residency, I was actually, I was initially trained in anesthesiology, and so I went to, I went to medical school, wanted to do the whole trauma kind of thing, and the trauma lifestyle is very hard on you. But when I first started out, all I wanted to do is trauma, 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 because it's where the action is. It's like
Okay.
that's the best test of your skills when somebody shot up and they're dying, and you got to save them now. Like
Wow.
there's, you got a few minutes, like this is it.
Wow.
And so I went to Miami for my residency, which is like there's kind of two places in the US that are the biggest trauma centers. You have, Cook in Chicago, or you have, Miami.
Wow.
And so it's called Jackson Memorial in Miami. And
Okay.
it's really the number one trauma place because, Miami has a lot of crime and drugs and stuff like this. And so, as you might imagine, there's a lot of trauma that comes with that. But I remember one time I was on call and I was actually in a hospital system. There's like 3 or 4 hospitals like all together in downtown Miami. It's kind of like a complex. And I was actually in one of the hospitals that's owned by the government. I guess I'll just say it's like the VA hospital that was there. And there was a guy who was actually having an allergic reaction called angioedema, where basically his throat was closing up from a medication he was taking.
Wow.
And I was a resident on call. I wasn't high on the totem pole. I was probably like, lower end of the totem pole. And I went to the nurses that were there. And at that time, it may be different now, but at that time they were all unionized, which is kind of unusual. And they didn't want to help. This guy was literally, starting to have shortness of breath. His sats were going down, like he was, his oxygen levels go down in his blood. He was sitting there like nervous as he could be because he could feel his throat closing up. And they were telling me to call somebody else to draw his blood, and then that's all you could do.
Ugh.
And I just became so frustrated that I actually took that patient. I talked to the patient. I said, "Hey, look, I'm trying the best I can to get you care here in this hospital, but I can't even get anybody on the phone in the operating room right now. Like it was at night. I think it was like 11 p.m. at night or something. And so I couldn't get a hold of anybody there. They were unwilling to help. And I said, look, I know where I can help you, but it's across the street." And it was in Ryder Trauma Center.
Okay.
So I actually took that patient, took his stuff. I said, look, if you're cool with it, like I will take you and I will roll you across the street to trauma center, and I'm going to put you to sleep and put a breathing tube in you so that you can breathe until the swelling goes down. Because that's what really needed to happen, because otherwise you close off and you stop breathing.
Sheesh.
So I took that guy, took all this stuff, loaded it into his bed, and we literally, like myself and one other resident, pushed this guy across the street. Like this in the middle, like almost like midnight in Miami, pushed this guy from one hospital to the other hospital, like stole a patient basically. And then arrived in trauma center. And since I worked there all the time anyway, I knew all the people. And we had everything set up, got the guy intubated. We went to sleep. He woke up a day later, totally fine, so happy. But like it took that level of, dare I say, like disobedience or thinking outside the box or like not conforming. Yes. And even though everybody told me what I did was wrong, and even after I got done, they came in and threatened me and said, like, look, you can't steal patients from one hospital to the other. It's a nightmare on paperwork and stuff like that. And I said, well, am I supposed to let this guy die? Like, really?
Wow.
And when the guy woke up, the first thing he did was he was the biggest advocate, and he stood up for me and like basically protected me. And so nothing bad ever happened because of it, thank God. But sometimes you have to break the rules to do what's right.
Oh, I love that. Sometimes you do have to break the rules to do what is right. What do you use as your, because as I hear your stories multiple times, you go against the grain and you're willing to venture out into the dark, into the unknown, because you're seeking something else. There's something else that is driving you and motivating you. What do you use as your barometer? Like, how are you finding what is right?
I use a lot, like people call it their gut or their hunches.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's probably one of the most misunderstood or underutilized thing that we have. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's been described for many years, but like people have a certain level of intuitiveness. And, we focus so much on science and these things, but please remember that science has a lot of flaws too. And, we only study things that, are basically funded, which means by definition, either the government has to fund it or a private corporation does. No one's going to fund, $7 million to study intuitiveness. So just a fact. So you got to realize, like, there's many things outside of science's purview that are not understood because there's not any economic reasons of why somebody should venture into that. But what I find is that a lot of times, especially with patients, and that's why it's so important to make that connection, because a connection is not only for them, but it's also for you, because the closer you get to a patient, when you really understand them, when you can look at them and you can see they're in pain, or you can see there's something wrong, but they don't necessarily want to say, and you can feel that, that's what I use. I use like the hunch, like the gut sense. And almost every entrepreneur I know, like, they typically have that themselves too. Like, very, very often, being an entrepreneur, you have to make decisions without all the information.
Yes.
And you're many times you don't have a full picture, and so you're just doing the best you can with very limited information in a very limited time frame. And so you have to rely on your gut or your hunches.
I can imagine as a doctor, especially in experiences like working in a trauma center, that you have to develop that skill set of making decisions and moving forward when you have life or death consequences. How have you kind of taken that skill set of being willing to make decisions? I talk to entrepreneurs who, without realizing it, are like camped out in a fork in the road. And I'm like, you got to make a decision. You got to move forward. What are some things that, we talked about intuition and gut. Are there other things that help you make decisions? Because when you own your own business, you got to be doing that all the time.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting because this is counterintuitive to the education system. And so what I find very often, especially, being a doctor, you have to go through all this education. So you get kind of a system drilled into you that, hey, you need to get an A. You need to get greater than 90% on your tests. To get into medical school, you have to have an A in calculus 2. Why? I don't know. We didn't really use too much of calculus 2, but for some reason I need to have an A in organic chemistry and calculus 2, So, for whatever reason, like, there's these things that are drilled into you and you're so focused on not making mistakes. And the reality is, like, you have to have some of that, especially in medicine. You can't make, critical errors, obviously, but at the same time, the only way that you ever are able to solve any problem is to start on the path and realize you're going to make mistakes. Realize that, hey, you may take some hits, you may go forward, it may not work. But as long as you're trying, and as long as you have a feedback loop, and as long as you're doing what you can and moving forward, just one foot in front of the other, the road will eventually open itself to you. And I think a lot of people forget, or they feel like they need to have like this kind of like whole thing that's mapped out. Yes. But the reality is, like, if I'm driving from Dallas to California, I don't know every turn I'm going to make. I don't know most of the turns I'm going to make, especially when I'm driving at night. All I can see is the few feet in front of me. So the only thing I can do is just follow the path and then trust the process will work out, and then keep evaluating how things are going. And I think that's where most people get into kind of the kind of lockup, or like I'm not sure what to do next. There's two choices, but I don't want to make either. And the reason why that's happening is they have a fear of failure.
Yeah.
And if they can just like go there and say, hey, it's okay to fail, because everybody I know that's been successful has failed at multiple things.
So good. Be willing to make a decision, move forward. And as you make that decision and move forward, then you gain more information. We can't just camp out at the fork in the road and wait for the information to come. We've got to be moving and in motion. Such good advice, so much wisdom there. Adam, you're somebody who very clearly has developed multiple incredible skill sets. And as an entrepreneur, you've had to make decisions and figure out, how am I going to take this skill set and actually create enterprise value? Like, how am I going to build this into a business? Because it's one thing to be super skilled and you can become a very well-paid technician, but you have taken your skill set and you've become an entrepreneur with it. Share with us kind of that process, what that has looked like for you and what your business looks like today.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know exactly why I was always so enthralled by business, but I mean, even when I was in residency, I was reading like, Chet Holmes' book, the sales system or the ultimate sales machine and stuff like this. I just always found business to be kind of like it's a true marketplace. And I feel like anybody from any walk of life can do business and there's nothing stopping them, whereas in some fields, you might have, it's becoming less of so, but like some fields, there are certain requirements. You got to know the right people. But in business, it's all about like, how much value can you deliver to the customer? And so what I find is that to make that transition from a technician to being able to offer value on a larger level, it's all about building teams. And that's what, as entrepreneurs, we spend most of our time, right, is building teams, essentially. Um, and building teams and processes. And those, like, what you find is that you can do something really, really well, but the ability to take that process and then build a system that allows other people to do that as well is really what adds that value, you know? And so I find in medicine that's really critical because, so often we'll find, oh, there's a good doctor, but like, there's only one, maybe there's only one doctor you can see. The reality is, like, just even with some of our treatments, like, we need to have teams that are able to do it and be able to train people and certify them and these kind of things. And so I always ask myself, like, what is it that I could do today that would provide more order to the system? Because one of the truisms I found in medicine and also in business is that the more order that you can bring to the environment, the better, the more impact you have. And there's a lot of things like with physics with this, but
Yeah.
like, for example, if you look at a crystal is a very ordered system. That's why it has a special structure like it does. And so the more order you can bring to something, the more likely it is to cause further order to happen. And then when that occurs, like, it creates this massive kind of like cycle of just value,
So incredible. I, I love talking to you. You're a man who, here's one of the things that I'm really appreciating about this conversation is, I mean, you're very book smart kind of an individual. And you also have taken all of that knowledge and that experience and that information, and you've turned it into wisdom. And it's not the same thing. And even to hear a doctor who typically would be a very straightforward, logical individual talk to me about intuition and connecting with his customers, like, there's a lot of wisdom in that. It's not one or the other. And you're constantly demonstrating this integration of multiple skill sets, which is just so exciting and fascinating all at the same time. You talked about teaching this skill set to individuals, and you've mentioned to me personally, you're leading the charge in a field that is kind of almost like the wild, wild west right now. Share with everybody what it is that you're doing, the opportunity that you saw in a growing and exploding industry, and how you are taking this order and organization and you're bringing it to the wild west.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that, and this is a good example for really any industry, but like in medicine, most of medicine is focused on what they consider like sick care, like taking care of people that have an illness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine, but there's a lot of people that aren't necessarily sick, but they want to get to the best version of themselves, And so, especially for people that are like high functioning people, so like, say for example, you're a CEO of a company, every day that you spend not at your optimal best is a day where you're not getting the best impact from your time, right? And so one of the things that we find is, like, we have clinics now that we're starting to deploy that are basically models of what we consider like an aesthetics practice, where we do like Botox, dermal fillers, these kind of things. We also have done like basically hormone supplementation therapy, optimization of nutrition, these kind of things, because what we find is that there's a lot of basically high performers that if I can get the CEO to feel like, level 10 out of 10, the impact that person has on their business is huge.
Yeah.
If you like, I also have other people that I help, that are in pain, that have, other illnesses, and they're also CEOs of companies. And, one person I'm thinking of off the top of my head, he's a CEO of a very large company. He has terrible pain. If that guy's in, 3 out of 10, feeling 3 out of 10, the ability to lead his team, to inspire his people, is so much less. Like, the impact is so much less. And so we take people like that, get them out of pain, optimize them. There's some people that, for example, want to have a certain appearance or these kind of things because it gives them more confidence.
Yeah.
We help them with that, like getting them to that level where they can feel the best about themselves. I think that's kind of the new wellness, if you will, and so in any industry, there's always that, there's always a chance to take what is old or what is, you just like you see with many different products, you can have a computer or you can have a Mac, right? Like the Mac is so much easier to use. It's, more.
Yeah. And this was my personal experience with you. I had minimize the daily pain that I was in for years. And you taught me that I don't have to be in pain. I don't have to just ignore it. And it wasn't until I flew out, we worked together, and you took away the inflammation that I was having in my SI joint. I didn't realize the level of noise that pain was creating in my life and the distraction that it was, until it went away. And I was like, holy cow. Like, it was an emotional experience for me because I hadn't realized just how much that pain was getting in the way. And you opened my eyes to realize that I don't have to be in pain every day. And
it's a
yeah,
world
go
of
ahead.
difference, right?
And what was that?
Is it not a world of difference, the way it affects you?
So life changing. Life changing. It gives me so much more ability to just be free and happy and connect with people on an even deeper level, to be more present with people. It has changed every area of my life. And I just thought, I had an inflamed SI joint because I had really big babies. And it just was, as you explained it to me, it was constantly re-injuring itself. And the body can heal itself given the right environments, according to you. And I was like, okay, let's do this. And you said you don't have to have surgery. And so you helped take that pain away. And it's true. Like, I have been pain-free since I saw you. What was that, 2-3 years ago? And it's just been incredible how much more I'm able to serve my clients, my kids, my husband, be more present with people, because that pain is no longer there. And it was a process, right? It was a process. And every now and then it will get inflamed or aggravated. And like you've been talking about, I know that, yes, there's a physical component. There's also a spiritual component to that pain. And I've learned how to address it from every angle. And I've been pain-free for the most part, Adam, because of your help, because of that approach, right? Approaching it like a family member, and let's not cut into you, and let's approach this and help the body heal itself. It's really incredible what you do. One of the things that you mentioned before we hopped on was that you are taking this, helping people look and feel their best, and the aesthetic medicine, and you're noticing how there's no protocols, like there's no standard of care within that industry. And so you are, again, true to Adam Sewell form, are saying, well, hey, why don't I create that? What are some of the things that you're doing to really create a standard for an industry that doesn't have a standard? Like, how does one even start to do that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So just to kind of use some background, like I started out with a medical spa, just a long time ago. And what I found was, like, people just don't understand what medical spas are, or at least they're not like living up to their greatest potential, because a lot of people feel like, oh, it's something vain, like, oh, people getting Botox or dermal fillers or these kind of things. And it's not that at all. It's people want to feel good. People want to feel confident. And if you can take somebody and you can turn back the clock on them about 10 years, like make someone look 10 years younger, do you know like what that does to like, I just tell you, like, we have a lady who's a high level businesswoman, does millions and millions of dollars of transactions per year. And like, just giving her the confidence to feel good about herself, the power that has in like, creating a business and a life, it's so amazing. And so when it's done correctly, it's right. However, in most of the industry, it's literally like, just like you described, like the Wild West. Like, you go to one place, you'll get bad results. You go to another place, you might get good results. It depends on who you see. And so there's a lot of fear, rightfully, in that area. And the reason why is because there's no standard of care. There's no like, hey, we do this way every time, and here's what we're always going to do, and here's all the protocols, and here's how we're going to. There's nothing organized there. It's, kind of like willy-nilly, and then some places do things this way, another place does something different. And we find that there's none of that. And so anytime you can bring order to a system, you bring so much value. And so that's one of the things we're doing, is to help providers learn the art of medicine. Especially in aesthetics, we call it the Aesthetics Art Institute, AAI, because it teaches them that, hey, this is not just about doing an injection. There's an art to helping someone get to their best,
Adam, this is so incredible. something that I've been contemplating recently is a lot of the work I do as an entrepreneur stems from the fact that I'm a product designer and I learned design and creation. And so, in a sense, as a coach, what I'm doing is an art, and it's very creative and it's fluid and it's not so cut and dry, and it's not the same for each entrepreneur that I'm working with. And so, the question I've been asking myself is like, how do I scale and systematize what is an art? So I would love to hear from you how you are beginning to answer that question, because I know that it's possible, and I've started to find different ways to do it. I'm curious for you and your team, how are you scaling something that literally is an art? How are you systematizing that?
That's a great question. And what I find is that it has to be very individual. And so what I mean by that is you can still have a system, you can still have training, you can still have protocols. But the reality is that what makes it an art is that, when you go to make your art, when you go to help that patient, when you go to design that product, you have a certain feeling or sensation within your body, right?
Yes.
And some people may even call that a frequency. The reality is, if I take EKG, I take some ECG leads, I basically put like some leads on your scalp, right? I can measure your brain waves. We do this all the time for people who have seizures and these kind of things. So we know that your brain is generating certain frequency waves. And so you're literally thinking in a certain frequency. We know, for example, like when you're drowsy, your brain operates at a certain frequency. When you're a child, your brain operates at a certain frequency. When you're thinking, it's a different frequency. So what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to take your team and develop them to have that frequency, because that frequency means that there's a certain thought pattern that's occurring. And if you can get your team to do that, then what happens is that you're able to scale an art form, which is normally only done by individuals. So having that, and this is all done through basically, what I consider like calibrating or focusing, where, you focus on an ideal. It might be like, hey, I'm going to design a product. And then you say, okay, well, the product I'm going to design, well, first I'm going to, start off by, getting into the right mental state, getting into the right, physical state, making sure I'm optimized, making sure that I've done my meditation today, making sure that what's my main focus, imagining the result that I want to feel, feeling great about it, and then going into it. And if you can train other people to do that, what you'll find is you're able to scale an art form rather than just a, mechanical practice.
That is incredible. You're blowing my mind, right? Of course. Like, so much of what I'm teaching my clients and entrepreneurs is how to get to that place of center, of alignment. And so to hear that you are teaching your estheticians how to do their daily meditation and get themselves centered and visualize the beautiful results for their client and then approach them. Of course. Yet I didn't see it. Like, that's so cool, so incredible. And I want everyone who's listening, like, this is not just have application to an esthetician who's working with injectables. This is for high-level CEOs, leaders of teams, entrepreneurs who are making big waves in the world. Like, you just learned one of the most critical secrets through Adam and how he's teaching his team. So incredible, so incredible. I mean, again, it would take a Doogie Howser, someone who was so bold and brave enough to kind of question what everybody says has to be, and to say, okay, I'm teaching my estheticians how to meditate and center themselves before going in and injecting people. I love this, Adam.
And we do the same thing, and even in our big meetings. So we have a group of clinics that we have a whole, like 112 staff members and stuff like that. And so we have even for them, like when we do our planning and stuff, we do start with the beginning. We start with a mission. We start with what is it that we really want to do? And like, what is the feeling we want to generate in our customer? And, we switch between customer and patient, depending, but what is the feeling we want to give them? And when you start to think about that, you can feel something here in your chest.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I find with especially entrepreneurs, the whole reason why they wanted to do all this stuff was that they have in them some drive and they can feel it. And you can feel it right here. Most people right here in the chest. Some people feel like a little lower, but basically right here in that passion, it's basically, an excitement that's waiting to be released. And if you can channel that, you can do anything. And that all starts with getting your mind on the right frequency, because your thoughts literally determine what your focus is on, right? And we know the difference between people that are high level performers and people that are low level performers is literally mindset. And this has been proven time and time again. You can look at the the Olympic Committee for the United States, for example, has a whole mindset division. I mean,
Yeah.
they would not send anybody to Olympics without mindset training.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet here we are doing business on multiple millions of dollars in business. It's like we don't even worry about it. It's like, why would that be
Yeah.
the case? So getting the
Totally.
team to have a certain mindset and having a process to recreate that mindset and recreate those frequencies of thought in your team is what allows you to scale the art of it. It allows you to scale the passion of it.
This is so incredible. I teach a lot of my clients creation, and there's basically a two-step process. First, the spiritual creation, and then the physical creation. And there's certain things that you do in the spiritual phase, and then you start to make it a reality. And that's what you're doing with your team. You're showing them both how to create themselves spiritually and how to create the results that haven't happened yet spiritually in their mind, visualizing what this client looks like at their best. And then from there, being guided from that place to then create it physically. So cool, Adam. This is really amazing. I love it.
100%. And a lot of 100% of that process is backed by science. Like, a lot of people don't go down into the deep, mathematics and quantum mechanics of it. But the reality is that like energy and thought is a spectrum.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of times, like, just like you described, like you start off with where you want to go, you get into that feeling state. And once you get into the feeling state, then the actual results will come out into the more visual things,
Yeah. So incredible. Oh my word. What's something that you are excited about right now with your team and your business? What's something you guys are excited about?
I'm just really excited about the way that the team grows. And I'm also excited about, I think more than ever now, so many people want to have an opportunity to do something of impact for themselves. Roll back the clock like 20, 30 years where you found that people did a job because they needed money to do something else, right? And a lot of people lived in this way where it's like, hey, I have to do this job I don't want to do so I can get the money I need to do. And then on Fridays and Saturdays, Sundays, or weekends or whatever, I do the thing I want to do.
Yeah.
That's gone away a lot. And so now you have people that they don't want to do a job. And that's why we have a lot of issues with, for example, like, a lot of companies have issues with staffing and these kind of things. But the reason also is that people want to do something they're passionate about. And as an entrepreneur, if you can share the passion that you naturally have with others, it becomes addictive to them because they love to be around you. They want to make a contribution. They want to be like that. And when you build that space for them, it allows you to not only scale your team, but also it unlocks into them a certain part that they've been craving to be.
Wow. Speaking of that passion, something that I know so many people who are listening to this are passionate about and share with you and I is this need to be free. And you mentioned to me some things that you're doing to create freedom for yourself and for your family so that you can continue to serve people on a really high level. Are you open to sharing some of those things that you're working towards to create and magnify that freedom?
Sure. Yeah. I think one of the things that you can start out with is like, whenever I tell most people that, for example, I'll talk to another physician and they'll be employed by a hospital. Many times, like, I don't know if you know, but physicians right now have the highest rate of suicide ever throughout history currently.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's really sad, but like, this is, the modern healthcare system is bad for everybody.
Wow.
Bad for patients, bad for the doctors. And so one of the things I find is the first thing I do is I get people at least to get them something on their own. So even if they've been a hospital employee forever, I get them to build something that, even if it's a small business where they're selling stuff on eBay, or even if it's just they want to create something, starting the process of creation helps build the freedom. And then once they get a business, they start to see like, oh, well, now that I have a company, like I could do anything. And then we start to go, okay, hey, now that you have a business, what can you do to get more freedom and prosperity? And we have a saying in all of our coaching and training, we say one vision, one purpose, freedom through prosperity. Because we can get distracted by details, but the reality is the reason we're all doing this is that we want to be prosperous in whatever way that is. It's usually financially, it's also, time, you want to have time with your children, you want time with your family. That prosperity is what you want. And so what I would recommend for most people is start by having a business, grow that business larger, and then consider diversifying internationally. And so one of the things that we're doing is we're also expanding internationally. You can nowadays, the world is so much more open than it was before in the terms of like, you can get a second citizenship You can build a
Yes.
company offshore without ever even going to that country now, which was
Yeah.
impossible in the past. You even have countries like Estonia, for example, that literally has a digital citizenship, digital passport,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
So now more than ever, it's important for you to seek the locations for your businesses that are the most favorable for them. And then eventually get to a point where you have the maximum freedom, where you're not dependent on and some people may be controversial, but I don't believe that any entrepreneur should be dependent on a citizenship to do certain things. I don't believe that they should be dependent on a certain locale or political things that are going on. Like, you're a creator, you should be able to create without any kind of barrier, you know?
Yes. Yes. I feel the same way. And this is why I think I've always been fascinated by you and your wife, and everything that you're doing and you're building is you have these very clear values that you have defined, and you consistently are living them. And there's power in that. And you're not just a talking head who's just speaking a bunch of things. You actually live them and you implement them. And I think there's so much to be admired about that, Adam. Thank you so much for everything that you've shared today. I could talk to you for like 10 more hours because you have such a breadth and a depth of knowledge in so many different areas. And again, this is why I wanted to talk to you on the podcast today, is you look at life with a broad spectrum of understanding and knowledge, and not through a straw. And you ask really incredible questions, and you're willing to take action and be bold and brave and courageous in ways that I think inspires others to do the same, right? And you spoke to that inner gut feeling, that inner voice, and you've had the boldness to listen to that voice, even at a really young age, which I just think is so incredible. And for anybody who's listening, if you've ignored that inner voice, today's the perfect day to start listening to it. And, as you listen to that inner voice, it starts to grow louder, and the noise of the world starts to diminish, and you don't hear the noise of the world as much. And you really can tune into that inner voice. Before we end, Adam, I have a few rapid fire questions for you.
Sure.
What is something that you do consistently every day? I'm fascinated by people's habits, and so I want to window into some of Adam's habits.
I call it prepaving. And so one of the things that I do every day, no matter what, is I always set like my goal for the day or my intention for the day, because what I find that over and over, and test it on your own, like I promise you, just test it, it works. But set an intention for what you're going to do next, and it works. And so it could be an intention for the day, it could be intention for the next hour, for the next meeting. But the more that you're focused on the meta level, if you will, like the while you're doing what you're doing, you'll notice that things line up easier and your life flows easier.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to stepping into the dark and not knowing every turn. When you set that intention, that's so good. Love that. So do you write it down? Do you just kind of visualize it? What are you doing to set that intention?
I personally use a program called Evernote. And it doesn't have to be like, Evernote's just an app on your phone, but
Sure.
you can use like notes or whatever. But if you like, I use Evernote and I literally write it down, and I have a little digital watch with a timer that goes off. And so I'll set that timer for like 30 minutes. So I know, like, I hear like a little beep, beep, and then I'll go, okay, hey, set the intention. And so I said, like, okay, well, the next hour I'm going to, write about this, or I'm going to, have a meeting and we're going to talk about this. And I want to be inspired. I want, the staff to be excited. I want to be able to transmit all my ideas, seamlessly.
So good. Love it. Is there a book that you keep on your nightstand that you frequently revisit?
There's a lot of them. A whole library.
I know you're a book guy.
Yeah, I would think that probably, man, there's so many of them. I feel like there's a lot of books that are. Sorry?
You can share multiple.
Okay. I feel like basically, Asking is Given by Esther Hicks kind of explains a lot of mental functions and these things. That's a good book, like kind of more spiritual. Also, I read a lot of Dan Kennedy books, which are great on business and marketing. And then, of course, I do read Russell Brunson books as well. I feel like those are good on the actual day-to-day processes. But I just find that, whatever inspires me is what I read, but I just kind of follow my hunch as well on that,
Yeah.
Sorry about that noise.
That's okay. You're a popular guy. What is some advice that you've been given in your life that has really benefited you, and something that you carry with you?
Sorry, what was that again?
Good advice that you've been given in your life that has benefited you.
I think always just to do what makes you happy. I know it sounds so simple, but it really is critical. And then I think that when you're happy is when you're able to generate the best results.
Love that. Love that. So good.
And happiness is all a matter of perspective, really.
It is a matter of perspective. It's how you're framing your life, your situation. Yeah. So good. Adam Sewell, this is incredible. I know there's going to be so many people who are wanting to connect with you, share their insights with you. What's the best place for people to connect with you on social media?
You can just go to I'm Adam Sewell MD, and you can find me on social media, or you can always just email adam@adamsewellmd.com.
Oh, wow. Just gave out your personal email. I love it. We'll have links to these places in the show notes. Adam Sewell, thank you so much for being on the show today. And for everybody who's listening, this is What's Working Now.